It's the return of my handy dandy shovel. Yeah, get in there. Today I'm going to be changing the brakes on the Camaro. Got these drilled and slotted rotors, front and rear, both sets, with brake pads by a brand called Nakamoto. I got them from a website called 1A Auto. And I got the whole complete set for $187. This probably costs, what, $300–400 for something this basic, drilled and slotted with ceramic pads. If you go to your local auto parts store or your major retailer. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to jack the car up. Make sure you got your jack stand, and your wheel chalked off. And when it comes to, if you still have stock rims on your Camaro, it's going to come with these little plastic lug nut covers. So what you're going to use is a 3/4 to take that out, 3/4 socket, and going to use a breaker bar. And before you lift the car up, what you want to do is break the bolts loose, so that way the wheels won't turn once you jack it in the air and try to get them off when they're still tight. Sometimes these plastic clips that are over the lug nuts are junk. They break real easy. So I'm just using a set of pliers to get these off. See, they're all cracked up and it's just real hard to come off once that happens. You see it's all split on the inside there. Find yourself a good brace point when jacking up the car. Just find somewhere that is somewhere on the frame, real sturdy metal there. And I have subframe connectors, so I'm going to place the jack stand right on top of it. Alright, got both sides jacked up off the ground. Got enough clearance. And what I also did was I took the jack, put it underneath the center of the car, and just applied light pressure for it to brace onto that cross member. And just to be sure of proper fitment, making sure all the holes in the rotor line up with the studs. Looks like the same diameter and thickness. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure if the new ones are actually a little thicker. Do a test on that later. Alright, there's two 12mm bolts on the back of the caliper, there and down here. And you're just going to loosen those up to be able to slide off the caliper. Alright, after you get the caliper off, make sure you put it somewhere where it won't dangle and damage that line. That's the brake fluid line. You want to make sure that stays intact. And there's a couple pins that go into the top and the bottom, and these need to be greased up, which this has old grease on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some brake cleaner on it, get this off, and then I'm going to re-lube it. Make sure everything's nice and clean, and don't use anything petroleum based because you don't want to dry out the seals. Also, to get the caliper off, I'm going to use a 12mm socket or wrench, and you see there's some thread locker on it, so I'm going to be putting blue thread locker on that when I reinsert it after I take off that brake clip assembly. To remove the rotor, you're going to have to take off this retaining clip for the caliper, and it's going to be two 18mm bolts. So get yourself a breaker bar, and also I turned the whole steering assembly to the right side of the car, so use the steering to your advantage so you can get to the points that are a little tough to get to if this was just to be straight instead of being turned in. Okay, so I got the brake rotor out. It's going to be in with the new, out with the old. And there's the new brake pad, there's the old brake pad. And this thing is actually heavier than this one right here. This one's a lot, almost, I don't know, say about 5 pounds lighter, maybe somewhere in that weight range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray down this with some brake cleaner and wipe it all down before reinstalling onto the hub assembly. And I'm going to see if I have a wire brush. I'm going to scrape off some of that rust. I wish I would have got some paint or something to paint over this, so that way it wouldn't rust up. Alright, going to spray down the rotor. Get yourself some brake cleaner. This has an oily film on it, and what that film does, it protects the rotor from rusting while it's inside the packaging. So make sure you get every little bit. Just get all that oil off. You're going to spray both sides. Turn that over. Very careful, especially if you're doing this up against a concrete surface. You don't want to chip or put any extra scratches in there. Just a nice little glaze. Wipe it down. Alright, you got the brake caliper bracket assembly on. Got the brake rotor on. And what you're going to do is make sure that these slits are going to look as if they're pointing towards the back of the car. And just make sure nothing grinds when you put it in. Nice smooth sailing. Alright, so what you're going to do, get yourself some anti-seize lubricant. Wish they had the copper one, but they didn't have the copper anti-seize that at the store that I went to. This comes with an applicator, which is real nice. So just gonna spread like a light glaze on here. I'm gonna spread that around, and also on the edges, like on the clips and stuff. I want to put a little in there. Try not to get any of this on the rotor, because then you'll just defeat the purpose of brakes being brakes. So I'm just gonna apply a little. I'm gonna smear it around with my finger. The top and bottom clips, because the sides of the brake pads are going to be sliding in between this, and if you don't do that, you're going to get some major squeaks. So this pretty much helps with noise reduction. And I'm just going to get my finger, just smear it around on the top and bottom clips, which that clip keeps falling out, so it's going to have to lube that up and put that back into place. And make sure there's a little tab, a little clip right here on the back of the brake pad. That's going to go on the back side. So it's going to go in the inside of the brake caliper bracket. Alright, we got it all together. It's looking pretty good. Can't wait to see what it's going to look like with the rims on it. And got the anti-seize spread on the back of it. Also up in these grooves here. Got to clean that off. Got a little carried away. And make sure that tab is facing towards the inside of the car, upwards on the upside. And got that anti-seize on the back of there as well. So we got this sandwich together. You got your brake pad, your rotor, and another brake pad. So you got your bread, meat, and bread. No cheese here, except for that joke I just made. Alright, so what we need to do now is going to compress the pistons back inside the brake caliper and make sure that you pop your hood, undo the cap for the brake fluid reservoir, so if any air needs to bleed up, it'll make the process easy. So what I'm doing here is I'm using an old brake caliper, or brake pad rather, and a C-clamp. So I'm going to just wind this in, pushing in both those brackets, or pushing the bracket into the brake pad and then pushing the pistons in. So you want the pistons flush, and when it stops, pretty much you're dead even. You don't want to over torque it, and that's how you're going to be able to put the brake calipers back into the piston, or the pistons back into the brake caliper. Twisting my words today. That way, when you put it on, it won't get caught, now that this is much thicker than it was with the old, thinner brake pads. Alright, so here's the pins that go into the brake caliper assembly. I'm going to clean these off. They have grease on them already, so I'm going to apply some new grease. And you want to grease these up because these are going to slide in and out when you press and depress the brake. You don't want them to get caught, and then you're going to have some major issues to where maybe the brake calipers won't close up. The pistons won't be able to move outwards or back in, and causing maybe an accident. So I'm going to coat it with this, and that's going to be that. I'm going to slide it back into place. Oh man, this is looking so good. So we're going to put some thread locker on these bolts that go into the caliper, that go into the sliding pins, and I'm going to have to line that up with 2 hands, but make sure you do that for the top and bottom bolts. Alright, just giving it one last scrub down. See all this extra stuff I got. So, not to get overspray or anything, I just took the brake cleaner, sprayed it directly onto the paper towel, and I'm just going to go right over it. Just clean everything up, make sure it looks nice. So do the front and back, just, just twist it, and just get every bit of it that you can. Alright, check that out. You can see those brake rotors right through the wheels very nicely. Thing looks good. I like it, I'm happy with it, but we just got to see how the performance aspect of it is, which I'm going to be videoing that too, possibly adding it onto this video. And that's how you do a front wheel. So make sure, go through step by step, make sure you don't miss a single thing, make sure you got every bolt in there, make sure you tighten everything down. When you do the wheels, make sure you do a star pattern. I know that gets beaten to death, but it's very important. And the manufacturers usually suggest anywhere from 80 to 100 foot-pounds torque for the lug nuts. So I don't have a torque wrench, but I'm just going to go by feel. Just get it on there as tight as possible without breaking any of the studs. Alright, I got the fronts done. And you can see little grooves in there right now. Some of that zinc coating is coming off. I just took it for a quick spin, but I'm gonna have to go into do the little break-in period, which I'm gonna go out and do now. And I'm gonna finish up with a part 2 for the rear brakes. So stay tuned.